Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamu alaikum. Welcome to another conversation hosted by Tabadlab. We call these Tabadlab Lives. Today we're honored to have Dr. Miftah Ismail, the Federal Minister of Finance for the government of Pakistan. Dr. Ismail, thank you for joining us. It's a real honor to have you in the Tabadlab office.
Thank you.
You've had a very difficult job, maybe one of the most difficult jobs on the planet the last few weeks. But I should, just in the interest of fairness, declare, my personal admiration and affection based on our long friendship. So I hope that it'll be a very friendly conversation, the kind of banter we usually enjoy. But I'm afraid I might need to start with a couple of harder questions that really, I think, capture and encapsulate the challenge that you face. But before we get to the challenges you have today, I wanted to start with a question about the degree of preparation that the incoming government had. The assumption is that somebody like Shehbaz Sharif, and I've said this publicly, I still stand by it, maybe one of the more competent individuals ever to grace governance in Pakistan, or so it was thought until this period. And you yourself, as everybody knows that you're a PhD in public finance, and people know that you're fully well-versed, deeply immersed in the issues that the economy faces, given that this is your second stint as finance minister. Did you feel that you and your team, the Prime Minister included, that everybody that was going to be dealing with this crisis from day one when your government took over, did you feel that you were well prepared? Because the picture on the outside is that there was a lack of preparation to make the key decisions in a timely fashion.
Thank you, Musharraf. Thank you for the nice introduction. No, I feel that Shehbaz Sharif definitely, and I think myself is included, we were very prepared. We were aware of what was going on. 15 days before Shehbaz Sharif became Prime Minister, or a month before he became Prime Minister, we were talking about this. We've been talking about the persistent problem of Pakistan having a boom-bust cycle. And a few days before he became Prime Minister, I had given him a presentation which suggested that one of the first things the new government will have to do would be to increase petrol prices. So we understood that there was a subsidy about fuel that we had to tackle. 2 days after I became Finance Minister, I flew to Washington, D.C. This was not taking a long time deciding whether we want to go back to the IMF or not. From day one, you can see in every presser I've said that we have to pay back $21 million next year.
$21 billion.
$21 billion next year, sorry. And that, at that point, when we inherited the government, the reserves were $10.3 billion US dollars. So obviously you can't, subtract 21 from 10 and still get a positive number. Within 2 days, I flew to the IMF. I requested an MEFP and they said, no, we'll not do it until we see the budget. They had a bunch of requirements, including increasing petrol prices, including diesel prices, stop subsidizing fuel, power, a whole host of things. Typical, the IMF program. And we went through this and we came up with a budget which we last year raised 6,000 billion, 6,100 billion in the end. Next year we're going to raise 7,500 billion rupees in revenue, plus another 800 billion rupees in petroleum levies. So we're increasing revenues by 33%. We've really understood what we need to do, which is to curtail our current account deficit, which is to stop the draining of foreign exchange. The central problem right now facing Pakistan is that we don't have enough money, foreign exchange, to pay for all our obligations. The thing that we need to do is to stop import, and we'll talk about that. So I think that we were prepared. Obviously, the quantum of the challenge is very large. Obviously, you need time to get those things done. And we are doing this. 2 days after coming back from the fund, we went to Saudi Arabia. From there, the Prime Minister went to Abu Dhabi. Their delegation came on Eid Day, and I spent my Eid Day, in the Prime Minister's office in Lahore, and so did a bunch of other ministers and secretaries. We've been working. Although the inputs don't really matter. Whether or not I'm working hard is not relevant. Whether or not we get results is what's relevant. And as I will tell you in a few minutes, I think we've got pretty good results.
So I think that's newsworthy if, that you think that, we've got good results. Because the impact of the last few months on the ordinary Pakistani, of course, you don't need to be, sort of given a summary of how devastating a 240 rupee a litre petrol price is for the ordinary Pakistani and the knock-on inflationary effects. But just on the preparation part, if I could just push you a little bit further, the expectation, and I'll share my personal expectation, was that given that I was aware, or at least I was assuming this quantum of preparation that you just talked about, that the first increase in petroleum prices would happen within hours of the Prime Minister taking office and taking oath. And it didn't take hours, and it didn't take days, it actually took weeks. How do we explain, or how do you try to explain to people who are well-versed in policy, who knew the extreme urgency of increasing petroleum prices, what, other than the politics of it, what else explains that delay?
Well, in your question, the first thing you said was that you don't need to explain to me the devastating effect petrol at the price of 240 has compared to, let's say, 150, which was the price that Imran Khan had. My contention is that the price of 150, because it was unsustainable, would have had much worse effects, which I think all of us understand. Yeah. But nonetheless, for a political party to raise prices of diesel by 120 rupees a litre, when Imran Khan is on the streets and you're facing a lot of odds, you're facing a lot of headwinds, when then you have to raise petrol prices by 100 rupees a litre, which both we did. And obviously they have significant negative effect on the people of Pakistan. But because the prices have risen internationally, there was no choice. I mean, we could have subsidized a little bit more, we would have defaulted. This was a choice, for instance, that Sri Lanka made, or it bet that the prices will not go above $60, $70. When it did, when the prices went up above that, rather than talking to the international community and making some adjustments, it made faces at the international community. In February, Sri Lanka was subsidizing fuel, and so was Pakistan. On the 29th of February, the government of Pakistan decided that the hell with the cost. We are just not going to, worry about sound economics. We are not going to worry about sound policy. We are going to play this populist game. And if the government defaults in 3 months, so be it. When we came, we made stark choices. Yes, admittedly, a few weeks later than we should have, perhaps. And as you know, that many of us actually believed and advocated that they should have been done sooner. But we had a coalition government. Politics has its own rules. Politics has its own speed. But finally, in 4 or 5 weeks, we came around.
We'll come back to the act of coming around and the impact, and you believe that there's been some success. I mean, I don't know if, staving off default should be the only measure of success, but we'll come to that. I wanted to maybe, back off a little bit and zoom out so that people understand, because a lot of people actually don't understand what the job of the finance minister is. This is your second go at this, and, I think it's one of the most important jobs in this country, and I think Pakistan is one of the most important countries in the world. So it's a really important job. The fact that it's as less understood as it is, I think, is worrying. My understanding is not important. How do you see the job of the finance? What is your job?
Okay. I am technically Minister of Finance and Revenue. Okay. So that all taxation department, the FBR comes under me, the Revenue Agency of Pakistani government comes under me. So I look after the taxation, whatever tax that you guys pay to the federal government, that is under my departments. And then I look after finance, so that, for instance, when other departments need money, they come to us and then we decide. I'm also chairman of the ECC, Economic Coordination Committee of the Cabinet. For instance, we had a meeting yesterday, just to give you an idea of what I do. One summary was from the information department. They needed money to advertise for the 75th celebration of Pakistan's, birth.
How did that go? Yes or no?
I said yes, but not the entire amount that they asked for. Then there was a summary from the Commerce Division that we have to give regionally comparative tariffs to our industrialists, exporters. There was petroleum and power division also had some inputs in this. We decided that we will give petroleum gas to all Pakistani industries already existing and exporting at no more than $9 LNG, and so we will subsidize the rest, and we have money in that budget for subsidy. We will also give power to our consumers, export industries who do not have gas at 9 cents a kilowatt hour, again, which is regionally competitive until we run out of 20 billion rupees that I had saved in the budget for that purpose. So these are the things that any finance minister does, that he or she intervene on behalf of whenever different government agencies are at a dispute or disagreement, and you broker these agreements, and you figure out where to finance these things to ensure that our business is competitive. Then you also, obviously, State Bank has autonomy, but again you also worry about State Bank issues and finances issues and all that stuff, as what's happening to our import, export. I, for instance, monitor daily imports from FBR, what is the total import so far in Pakistan, what is the total export so far in Pakistan. Then I also monitor what is the payments made by the State Bank, so that holistically somebody is there to keep an eye on the finances of Pakistan. That's my job.
So broadly, fiscal policy, which is making sure that everything in terms of expenditure and revenue is balanced out, and whatever isn't balled out is being financed from a credible source, and you don't run out of money. That's one key, fiscal policy. The other is monetary policy, and you alluded to it a little bit. I want to get your opinion on the idea of state bank autonomy. This has been a long-standing issue globally as well. Is monetary policy correctly the domain of a finance minister, or should state banks or federal reserves be autonomous in terms of determining interest rates and money supply?
So there are two central jobs that a central bank does. One is to, at least in Pakistani context, one is to regulate banks and keep an eye on banking industry. That is completely their job, and that is something which is a very specialized, difficult job. And I think our central bank does a very good job. Historically, has done a very good job, with a few exceptions. And there, I think there should be complete autonomy. There should be absolutely no input from the finance ministry or the prime minister's office in their discretion and in their regulation of over banks. That's their one job, is to secure people's money and all that, so that's, and which is fine. Then there is the monetary policy aspect, which is they're running the monetary policy. There, my primary objections to the previous previous government's policy, which was done in collaboration with the IMF, was that they had given too much power to just one individual, the governor. There was not enough checks on the governor himself or herself, through the policy board or through the board of directors, number one. And number two, that there should be some coordination between the governor and there was a monetary policy, fiscal and policy board. There's nothing wrong with the finance minister and the governor speaking on the phone each day. It turned out that the previous governor and previous finance minister were at loggerheads. I actually had a good relations with the previous governor, and the current deputy governor, who is now the acting governor, I actually have a good relations with him. And I mean, my first phone call today was to the central bank governor. One of my longest phone call yesterday was with him, because he was upset about something, so he was calling me. So I mean, but we coordinate well. I mean, so they tell me, for instance, I mean, I'll just go into a policy if you allow me.
Please, okay. That's the idea, yeah.
So this problem right now in Pakistan is that we don't have enough dollars and we have to pay too much money outside. So for that, we actually went to the IMF and we got into an IMF program. IMF is going to give us $4 billion over the next year, which is the highest IMF gives to a country, of Pakistan's size economy. And when the IMF program has started, because of the staff level agreement, the World Bank money has started flowing in, the Asian Development Bank money is flowing in, and there are other bilateral countries who are also helping us. Pakistan's debt mostly is either to bilateral countries. Either we have a bilateral debt, which is to Saudi Arabia, UAE, China. Yeah. Or we have multilateral, World Bank, Asian Development Bank, Asian Infrastructure Investment Bank, Islamic Development Bank, Asian Infrastructure Investment Bank, stuff like that. We have very little Euro bonds or Sukuks and all that. There is no, people talk about restructuring and all that, there is no need because we have very small debt, from that. But we still need to repay those debts or if not repay, re-roll those debts. And Saudi Arabia, for instance, has already indicated that it would, and China normally does and all that stuff. Now when the IMF has come in, our difficulties in that sense are over, but nonetheless what happens is that Pakistan bleeds money every month. We expect to bleed another $10 billion in current account deficit. Current account deficit essentially is imports minus exports minus remittance, right? And normally we can finance a small current account deficit, but right now at this level it's very difficult for us to do so. So I decided that we're not going to have current account deficits. I decided that we're going to actually run, we're not going to bleed money every month. And so through formal, informal means, whatever, and it was not just I shouldn't say I decided. There are 4 or 5 people, 4 or 5 of us, myself, the Secretary of Finance, Governor State Bank, Deputy Governor State Bank.
Army Chief?
No, just the 4 or 5 of us, not the Army Chief and not the Prime Minister or anything. 4 or 5 of us sat down, we said, this is what we're going to do. And we've informed the Prime Minister that this is where we're going.
And he's happy with this plan?
Nobody is happy with this plan, but this is a plan that you have put in, right? Nobody's happy with surgery, but sometimes it's necessary, right? So we decided that I'm not going to do this. I've spoken to Pakistani economists teaching in Pakistan and in foreign universities, wonderful foreign universities. And I've also sought their guidance. And obviously not everybody is on the same page. My idea is that in the next 2-3 months, we are going to curtail our imports. I can't increase exports in 3 months, but I can curtail imports in 3 months.
And basically suffocate all growth and destroy the future growth prospects of the economy?
No.
Okay.
This was going to be a friendly talk, thank you. First thing, no. Basically right now to ensure that what I know everybody understands. I know we're not going to default. The Governor State Bank knows we're not going to default. The Prime Minister knows we're not going to default. Not just that we have inside information that this thing, but that we know that all the balls that we have in the air, everything is...
They're going to land where they need to land.
Yeah, and so we're not going to default. But I need to send a positive signal to the market. So if, for instance, last year, what is the problem in Pakistan? 2 problems. Last year we had imports of $80 billion US.
And we grew.
Against that import of $80 billion US, yes we did, we had exports of $31 billion. Okay?
The highest ever exports.
Yes, but $31 billion. Okay. So if you're running a shop, and I'm a Maimun, I come from a long line of business people, right? And shopkeepers perhaps, but now industrialists. If you're running a shop, and you have purchases of 81 billion and sales of 31 billion, you should be fired. This is what happened actually, okay? Something has to give. So I can't increase sales right away, but I can slow down my purchases. I really can. So this is what I'm trying to do, is to moderate my purchases, not slow down our exports, and then for the next 2-3 months I'm going to do that. And every week now I have a greater handle on the foreign currency. In a couple of weeks you will see that my inflows of dollars into Pakistan, maybe less than a couple of weeks, will be inshallah ta'ala more than my outflow of dollars from Pakistan. Okay? Once that happens, pressure on rupee will vanish, stabilize, and we can bring it back if we want to, or we can build reserves if we want to, and we'll do that. That's what we're trying to do. Okay? And within 3 months then, and this is where your first questions come, how well prepared I am, how competent is Muslim League, and how competent is this government. And if we are really competent, then within 3 months we should not have to do this forcefully, and we should have a policy plan so that our imports are gradually, automatically, organically less, our exports are automatically, organically increasing, our remittances are automatically, organically increasing. We are getting enough FDI into Pakistan so that our bleeding of dollars stops. But this I guarantee you that Pakistan, as long as I am the Finance Minister of Pakistan, Pakistan has had too many years of living on the edge, too many boom-bust cycles, and it is no fun going to the world, to the IMF, to the Chinese, to the Saudis and asking for money. We should pretty well make sure that the money coming into Pakistan is more than the money going out of Pakistan.
So there's a lot that you've said, and I have a lot of questions, and I respect and I appreciate that some of these are harder questions, but just to pick up on this cycle issue, the boom and bust cycle, everything that you just said gave me a feeling of deja vu. And I wonder if you also had a feeling of deja vu, although for some of that period you were in jail. But I wasn't, and so I was able to read the paper and the Twitter every day. And I was speaking every day, and I was saying that what the previous government did between its coming into office in the late summer, around now, of 2018, a couple of weeks from now, and the next 6 to 8 months. First, there was a lack of preparation. You know, we can prosecute that government for all its mistakes, but it essentially did the same thing to stabilize as what you're doing. So there is a sense of deja vu. There is a sense of repetition. What are you doing that's going to be different? One question I had as you were speaking was, I wonder if Miftah Ismail has a speed dial group of like the 10 biggest exporters in the country with whom he has a daily conversation about how they're going to deliver for Pakistan starting in October when everything starts to settle down. Can you give us some assurance or some confidence that the cycle as it's existed before, like it did in 2017 and 18, that this is going to be different in terms of the outcomes?
Well, I mean, let's go back a little more, if we can. In 2007-8, we had good growth, and that year we had a current account deficit of 8.1% of GDP, 11.5 or $11.7 billion. And again, in 2008, we had to go to IMF. And again, you had to slow the economy down. Inflation came in, and stuff like happened, and you all overnight had to revalue the currency from 60 to 80 rupees, one third. Then 2013, when we came, the exchange rate. I mean, we had $7 billion in a couple of months. You know, in 6-7 months, the exchange, the currency, foreign currency reserves were down to $2 billion, and we again had to go to the IMF.
Yeah.
Then when PTI came in, we again left a $19 billion current account deficit. So one of the things we have to understand, and at that time, obviously, I mean, there has been a lot of policy argument now in public that Mr. Dar didn't think that we should have devalued, and I understood that maybe we should have devalued. And his point, and I think point is well taken, is that, you know, by devaluing, you've not been able to increase exports anyway. I mean, look at how much devaluation we've done, but we've not exported. But there are many other reasons why you devalue, not just because you also, you know, you want to, you know, change relative prices. But the problem in Pakistan is, and I think that the previous government really didn't do anything. Yes, they took the steps that we are taking now, perhaps, you know, later than they should have, but they took the steps. Then COVID came, they got much easy financing from around the world.
Sure.
The COVID was bad perhaps for the economy, but it was good for the government finances, you know.
Sure.
And what happened was that then they became complacent. The last budget of Shaukat Aziz was really a disaster. And then, you know, and then the decision in February was just, you know, suicidal, really. But again, they go back to a 17 billion current account deficit. You know, just made no sense. You know, when you had a year before zero deficit.
So how are we going to
So what the people have not understood. I'm sorry, it sounds a little intellectually arrogant, but I don't think people really in Pakistan understand what is the issue here.
Okay.
Ours is a seriously uncompetitive economy. That's why no matter at what dollar value of devaluation, rupee value, we are not able to export. Okay.
Is that because of elite capture?
Let me start this. It's because, well, there are two ways to think about this. The fundamental thing is that nobody pays taxes in Pakistan. So how do you get paid taxes? When stuff comes to your port, you physically hold them and you say, okay, now you pay tax. So people pay tax. 52% of your tax come from the port. Then when that imported...
The taxation of our imports.
Yeah, I mean, custom duty, income tax, sales tax, half of the tax that we collect is collected only at the port.
Okay.
Okay? More than half.
Which is an extraordinary...
Which is an extraordinarily high number, but that's not where the story ends. Then when these exported goods, now we know where these exported goods are going. For instance, when a pharmaceutical company imports an active ingredient, we know that now this pharmaceutical company has this active ingredient. So now, or if my company, for instance, imports something, or if any company imports a particular ingredient, we know that company now has a raw material. Now when it makes a finished good from that, we also tax that. So because of those imports, we are able to tax. But when we tax imports so much, what happens is that we create these high barriers. And what happens when you create high barriers is that domestic markets becomes more profitable or your manufacturers only sell to the domestic market. 80% of Pakistani manufacturing only sells to Pakistan. Okay? Pakistan is a very, very poor market. It makes no sense to only want to sell to Pakistanis. You should really want to sell to Americans and to Saudis and to the Chinese and to the Germans. Why are you selling to Pakistanis who are poor people? With the per capita GDP of nothing, $1,500. What happens is that because of the barrier to entry, because of the high cost of selling to Pakistanis only sell to Pakistanis, and they're not selling abroad. We have become uncompetitive. Now, either we reduce our taxation of imported goods, but if we did this, then FBR will have no money, or we figure out a way to tax incomes as opposed to imported goods, right, which is the only way to do it. Now, you can think of this as elite captures that rich people don't pay tax. That's one way of thinking about this. And then those companies that are actually selling to Pakistanis, then obviously they extract rent as well, but that's a different story.
What's the plan that you have, and what's the timeline in your mind as to when you'll be able to...
Time is now. There is no time to waste.
Are you already working on tackling these issues?
So three things needed to do. You need to increase agricultural productivity. We call ours an agriculture country, and we import wheat, we import cotton, some years we import sugar, we have less productivity than most countries that specialize in the products that we produce.
Problem is known. How do we shift?
Well, this year, for instance, I've kept like 21 billion rupees for improved productivity of agricultural stuff. And we
that should please Asim Ejaz Khwaja, who's really done a recent thread focused on productivity.
I hope it does. And if it doesn't, then I'll learn from him and try and improve these things. Secondly, we need to get our manufacturing geared for export. And so right now the incentive is to sell to domestic market. We have to change that incentive and sell to export market. And the third is that this is perennial problem in Pakistan of state-owned enterprises which are not only inefficient themselves, but they bring down the efficiency of the entire sector. We need to get rid of those companies.
Okay, so I wasn't going to bring this up, but you reminded me. There's news about some fast-track sale of publicly held assets. My concern is not an efficiency versus effectiveness concern or the classical privatization debate. Those are not really principal concerns. For me, the concern is when efforts have been made in the past, they've resulted in disastrous outcomes. The PTCL privatization of 2006 is a very good example. I think one of the big reasons the Emiratis are sick and tired of us is rooted or anchored in that transaction. Certainly, I think that the Reko-Dik example, one which has recently come back into sort of the positive aspect of what Pakistan is doing economically, but for, what is it now, 14, 15 years, that was also stuck in a infinite loop. These transactions that governments do to earn a quick buck, to get rid of these public assets that are a burden, they end up becoming burdened with litigation, and those litigatory sort of processes turn into decades-long burdens and liabilities for the country. What's going to be different about what you guys are planning to do with these public assets?
We understand the limitations that Pakistan has. We understand the red tape, the fake accusation, and perhaps some legitimate accusations and all that stuff. So we're going to keep it very simple and elegant also. A friendly country, and even if you can guess the name, don't guess it. A friendly country said to us, I had asked a friendly country for deposits. They said, we don't do deposits anymore because you guys never return deposits. We haven't returned their deposits, which are
from 22 years ago. Yeah.
22 years ago. They said, we will invest in your stock market, in shares that are owned by the government. They further said that we want enough shares that like
management control.
No, not management control. Just one board seat, 10-15%, whatever.
So there's no management.
There's no management control.
Okay. So that's not publicly, I think, known.
Well, now it is.
Okay.
I mean, it wasn't known that it was not there, but I mean, because there's been so many accusations by so many irresponsible politicians that So they wanted some. Okay. There is no provision in Pakistan for a government to actually be able to sell this back to the government. One of the things that, and they've done this with other countries, is within a couple of weeks. But here in Pakistan, it's been 2-3 months. We don't even have a law. Now we will hopefully have a law or an ordinance, whatever. Now, one of the things they said is, because I was talking about this, that, the stock market is at a low and this and that, is a buyback agreement, a repo, or a buyback agreement, so that this friendly country comes to Pakistan and says, I want a share of, this company, I want a share in Tabadlab, and, I'll pay you $50 a share. Now, before you decide whether $50 is a good price, less price, or more than the market price, he also says to you that you can buy this back at 5% more than $50. So that's it. So there is no, in 2 years or 3 years you can buy the share back. So there is, there is not much even to do about price discovery, basically, because if you think that, if some politicians think that we've sold it at too less a price, then you can just buy it back. If you think you've sold it at a very good price, then don't buy it back. That's at our option. Okay, that country wants to help us. That's why they're giving us a good deal. Now, but nonetheless, at what price do you want to sell? So, we will, it turns out in Pakistan, it takes 91 days just to hire a financial advisor. So we've simplified that also. It takes 470 days to privatize a company. That's why we've not been able to privatize anything. Since 2007, a bank called SME Bank is losing money, 2007. Since 2008, they're trying to privatize it. They've not been able to do so. Since 1996, they're trying to privatize Roosevelt Hotel in New York. They've not been able to do so. And a number of governments that have changed since 1996. If the privatization law is not able to let you privatize something for 30-some years, maybe there is something wrong with the law, Maybe there is a little more red tape than there should be. So this is a G2G thing we're trying to do. Before people, obviously, but in Pakistan, people will accuse you of stuff without even knowing the facts, which is fine.
One could disagree with this scheme not because they're afraid of theft or corruption, which are real concerns, but also on ideological reasons or on a different view. One of the views, the one maybe that I'm maybe a little more partial to, is the idea of state-owned enterprises being held by a company or a board or a structure, a holding company that represents the sovereign. It's a sovereign wealth fund, if you will. Why is it laughable or unrealistic for Pakistanis to dream that they can have a sovereign wealth fund much in the way that other much wealthier countries do? Is it just the fact that Pakistan doesn't have that wealth? Because certainly it seems to have the talent.
Pakistan doesn't have the wealth, then Pakistan doesn't have the management experience, and Pakistan doesn't have the laws, nimble enough laws, or the political culture to allow management of good things. And when people talk about other people holding, on like 10%, 15% of a government-owned company, understand also that the government of Pakistan only owns 52% of PSO. That's it. The 48% of PSO is held by other people. OGDC is already listed, I think, outside Pakistan, I think in the New York Stock Exchange, if I'm correct. There are other companies of Pakistan who traded in Pakistan who are listed, government-owned companies who are listed outside of Pakistan. PPL, for instance, is doing business with foreign companies, sharing oil wells and stuff like that. So there is nothing wrong with international collaboration.
Let's move to sort of the way out of here. You've described a little bit of it, but again, even zooming out further, when you imagine a life as a finance minister that isn't under constant attack and threat because of the political instability, what kind of a reform program would you have? I think you've talked a little bit about it already, but if you were to summarize it, what is the Dr. Miftah Ismail formula for reforming Pakistan's elite captured or imbalanced economy?
Ideally, a finance minister should be worried about increasing growth, restriction inflation. Ideally. That's not what I have considered to be my job description. And if you look at my press conferences, my talk shows and all that stuff, I've never talked about those two things now. I talk about saving Pakistan from default. I talk about what is happening in Sri Lanka, where hospitals have closed down because there is no medicine, where housewives line up for 4 days to buy cooking gas, where people line up for 10 days to buy fuel, where the price of petrol is actually 10 times. 470 is the official price to petrol, 3,000 to 4,000 is the black market price of petrol. Okay, where people have difficulty now burying their loved ones for whatever reasons. I don't want Pakistan to go there. So at this point, I'm not worried about this or that. I'm just absolutely going to make sure that as long as Allah has given me this opportunity, and this is an incredible honor because it's a very important position also, and at a very critical time that I've been given this important position, that as long as I have this honor and this responsibility, which I take very seriously, that I'm not going to let Pakistan, default, and we've done everything now to make sure that they will not. And I'm happy to talk to everybody and anybody who can help me and advise me. Then finally I decide what I need to do. And I've said that, at some point, politics is really important. Politics, I think, maybe is a big difference between our culture and non-human, societies, although they even probably have politics in, ape societies and chimpanzee societies. But at some point, your political interest, your party interest should all take a back seat at this point. And this really this time has come in Pakistan. This time really has come in Pakistan. Unfortunately, our political leadership is not really understood. The tamashas that are happening in Pakistan, the state Supreme Court and the legislatures and all that. But nonetheless, I don't let any of those things bother me. I don't let those things distract me. I know what I need to do and I'm doing that.
If somebody told you that Imran Khan wants to be convinced by you of the decisions that you're taking, and if you manage to convince him privately in a one-on-one session, you would do it, but you would have to go to him and you can't seek anyone's permission, would you go and talk to Imran Khan?
I would, not even, I have no issues going to anybody, okay, you know me, ego is not an issue with me, right? So that's not, Alhamdulillah, I don't lack self-esteem, so ego is not an issue with me. I would not go to Imran Khan or anybody without consulting or telling my Prime Minister. That's for sure. I will definitely tell the Prime Minister, sir, that I'm going. I'm 100% sure he'll not stop me.
Really?
No, he'll not stop me. He said, go.
Because I assume that your party and particularly the Prime Minister would absolutely forbid any engagement with the
that's not Shehbaz Sharif. Shehbaz Sharif would never stop me. The day he was the leader of the opposition, in his first speech in the National Assembly, and at that point, they were really smarting from the elections, the whatever, the RTS and all that stuff. He stood up and he said, he called Asad Umar a genius, and he said, and I think he should take the words back, but
we're going to have to give Asad a chance to respond to that.
No. Asad's a brother, and Asad is a smart man, without a doubt. Okay. But Shehbaz Sharif said that I am willing to do a charter on the economy.
Yeah.
And the government very arrogantly, Imran Khan especially, said no to that. And in the day he became Prime Minister, he again says that I want to do a charter on the economy. Well, if he wants to do the charter on the economy, I think I would be involved, right, being the finance minister, right? So
you would have to talk to
yes,
everyone.
and what's wrong with talking with Imran Khan and others, you know? I mean, frankly speaking, I joked about Asad and all that, and, you know, and I apologize if you know, I didn't mean that in a bad way. But Asad and I mean, you know, we've exchanged messages. Fawad Chaudhry and I are good friends. I mean, I'm good friends. Shibli Faraz and I are good friends. We have good friends within the PTI. I have very good friends within People's Party and other parties. And in fact, I mean, you know, I mean, we'll probably end up running an elections against People's Party also whenever the next election happens. So what? I mean, you know, so I have no ego, no problem talking to anybody.
I think that's really one of the things that I personally sort of really enjoy about you, and I think is a real gift and an asset for you and hopefully for this country. Before we wrap up, I think it would be really not very smart of me not to ask a little bit about the state bank governor's position and that process. From the outside, I'll describe it to you, and you can choose as to how you want to respond to this. From the outside, it looks like the dysfunctionality of the coalition government is at its highest when it comes to a conversation like this, where one party within the cabinet, within the coalition, is insisting on a candidate, whereas perhaps the PMLN or certain people in the PMLN, namely Miftah Ismail, are dead set against that one said individual. Is this what's actually happening? Or let me ask the question differently, or let me ask the second question, because I want an answer to that one. And the second is, just like the petrol price, how was this not something that you guys resolved on day 3 or day 4 of coming into office?
I mean, you could either say it's my fault, and I think that would be fair, and I would admit this. But the thing is that I was actually pretty comfortable with Raza Bakar also. But there were reasons the government didn't want to, you know, continue with Raza Bakar, which is their prerogative. And I'm very comfortable with Murtaza Sayyed, okay? And I guarantee you that I'll be very comfortable with whoever the next person is. I'm 100% sure of that, because I know all the 6 people who've been interviewed. I was comfortable with Murtaza Sayyed. This was a time when we were doing a budget. This was a time when we were doing a very intense negotiation with the IMF. And then after that, we got into a very intense negotiation with the IMF, again around the time of MEFP, getting the MEFP. During Eid holidays, Murtaza Sayyed, the acting governor, Dr. Inayat, Awais, the Special Secretary of Finance, Ali Tahir, Secretary Power Langrial, myself. I mean, seriously, Hamid was during Hajj, but he was also with us on WhatsApp. We were working throughout Eid all night long. Okay, and even last night I got some messages from Langrial, Power Secretary, at 5 a.m. in the morning. Okay, and at 11:30 we spoke to each other, and I spoke to Hachima and all that about stuff. So I mean, so we were working very hard. At that point, I just thought that, you know, whether it's Murtaza or somebody else getting something, just changing stuff right now in midstream would be difficult. So I wasn't really pushing for it. Now I think today, I think there's a meeting at 6:30 that Naved Kamar is chairing to finalize the appointment. I think today it will be done. Tomorrow, hopefully, we'll name a new governor.
So it's about to happen. That's fantastic. Final question. Again, a little bit more newsy than I would like, but I really enjoyed, you know, having the opportunity to hear you explain through your vision and the things that you're doing. And I hope you found it useful as well, because usually media sound bites don't afford or allow for sort of the extended version of what's going on. But one of the things I think that everybody's concerned about is the next few days. We're having this conversation on the 26th of July. It was anticipated by many optimists like myself that the IMF money would have come in sometime around this week. Is there any chance that they want a reopening of the conversation? Because there is that rumor out there. Or is this money a matter of hours and days before it comes through the Treasury?
It's a matter of days or weeks, but not hours. And there is absolutely no chance of this happening, absolutely none.
Of what happening?
Of IMF wanting to have a re-conversation around this issue.
Okay.
IMF has some prior actions before they give money, which includes, for instance, the increase of PDL, which happened on the July, and there would be more, I mean, in the next month. IMF also wanted a reduction in tariff subsidy, which happened a couple of months back, increase in annual rebasing of tariffs, which Imran Khan had not done for about 18 months, which we've done. There were some adjustments to exchange rates, interest rates, that's already done. And the passing of budget, all of that has been done. So, I mean, there is no prior action that is left, really. So the money will happen. The only thing is that they have a vacation of directors from the 1st to the 15th of August. So then that's why the meeting is a little later than I would have liked, and I'm still requesting them to hurry the meeting up, maybe perhaps to hold it during the vacation time or just right after that. So if that happens, then we'll get the money sooner. But the money is there. I mean, the money is going to come, and it's going to be not $900 million, but it's going to be $1.2 billion. And then during this next year, we're going to get $4 billion.
Fantastic. With all my own prayers and good wishes of the Tabadlab team, another note of thanks to you for making the time and having this in-depth conversation. It was really good to talk to you. Thank you so much, Dr. Miftah Ismail.
Thank you.